Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have a great show for you this week. We spent the week at the New York Auto Show. Lots of big reveals there, from finally seeing the Ram electric truck in the flesh, in the sheet metal. That was pretty cool. There were updates to the 2024 Jeep Wrangler, which, hey, that's always interesting. Kia EV9, Genesis GV80 Coupe Concept, and plenty of other things. It was a pretty, it was a busy show for about half of the day. Let's put it that way. It was a good show by the standards that are like sort of new auto shows, if you will. Road Test editor Zach Palmer joined me there, and he joins me now. How you doing?
I'm great. And yeah, that's kind of the perfect way to put it. For an auto show in 2023, it felt kind of jam-packed versus a lot of others that we've had here as of late. There was a lot of new stuff there, a lot of stuff we've never seen before, and actual reveals. Yeah. So that was neat to see.
So we are recording this on Friday morning. That's a bit later than we normally do this. So by the time this drops, some of you guys will be listening to it on Friday afternoon, which is great. Enjoy obviously the holiday weekend too. If you have a minute while you're running errands, hopefully this podcast gets into your feeds. If you need to see more, Saturday morning, you're going over, what was going on in the car world, with your coffee on your phone, head to the site. We have galleries. We have a roundup. The editor's picks are going to go up today. As we're recording this, we don't actually know them. Perhaps I'll get that later in the day, which is kind of cool, or later in the show. So all that stuff's going to go up. News editor Joel Stocksdale was also there. And check out some of the great videos put together by producer Amr Sayur, who also was on the ground with us. And it was great to see everybody. It really was a good show. So let's get into some of these things. I kick off with the Ram. I mean, people like trucks, or so I'm told, right? The Ram REV 1500. The numbers are pretty eye-popping. Just the range, the power, and how quick it'll charge. The only area that some people thought they under-delivered was the design. Not so much that it looks bad. I think it looks pretty good. But just that concept car that they showed a couple months ago was so over the top that I think people thought that might really be the direction they'd go, but not really. And you talked to Ralph Gilles, who's the head of design for Stellantis, and he explained what they were going for here.
Yeah. He really explained, why, that concept was so futuristic looking versus the production truck is what it is today. That concept, at least to Stellantis, is going to predict trucks years into the future, not necessarily the truck that we have today. So maybe the next gen electric Ram will have a design similar to that, with crazy stuff like the 3 rows, the wild midgate, and just all of these interesting and innovative features that the current one doesn't have. Because it's essentially, I mean, if you didn't know all of the really cool stuff going on underneath it, it looks a lot like a Ram 1500 gasoline truck does today. But like you were saying, there's a lot of really cool specs in here. Just going over some of the big ones, this thing has like the biggest battery pack that I've seen in any electric vehicle yet. I think it's even bigger than the Hummers. Yeah. I think most people have estimated the Hummers to be just over 200 kilowatt hours. Ram has already said the big one with 500 miles of range is going to have a 229 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is just wild to think about. Big vehicles like a BMW iX or like a Mercedes EQS SUV, like these are big luxury 3-row SUVs. Those only have like 100 kilowatt hour pack. This thing is double that and more. So try to wrap your head around that. There's a lot of batteries in this thing. But that was one of the priorities for Ram. They wanted range. They didn't want any compromises. So here we are with a giant truck with hopefully no compromises in that respect.
It's interesting. I was at the press conference, which was really like by like New York standards, even past and present. They had their global CEO, Carlos Tavares, there, which frankly at New York shows, you don't always see the CEO there. You see like, the North American chief or the boss of like the brand. You don't necessarily see the big guy like Tavares is, so I thought really between Stellantis and then Hyundai Motor Co., because they had like 3 brands, they carried the show basically. But going back to Ram a little bit, I thought they were almost defensive a little bit. Like they were like, revolutions take time. Revolutions are worth waiting for, which is almost like I don't think it was tongue in cheek, but it was like defensive. Like, no, yeah, Ford and Chevy did it, but whatever, we're coming along too. And where's Tesla? Like there was some subtext there that it seemed like they said, but then they didn't say some things. And I mean, my kind of thought on that is if this comes out and they could produce them, without any like major issues, which there's no reason not to at this point, right? Like there's no quality issues with the Ram, it's a strong truck. They're going to be right in there with it, and it's going to be a very compelling product. And at the end, nobody's going to remember that they were maybe a year after Ford and Chevy. And really, Chevy's not quite there yet either. So I think it's going to be really an interesting 3-horse race.
Yeah. The way that I heard it described from Gilles and from other folks at Stellantis, the general gist of it is like, hey, we might not be first to the party. We might not be second. We might actually be last to the party.
Yeah.
But we're going to beat everyone once we do arrive.
Yeah.
We're going to have the most range, the best acceleration, the best towing. I mean, Gilles was even like, we made sure that we had the biggest frunk. We had a bigger frunk than the Lightning, a bigger frunk than the Silverado. It's bigger. So that's the general theme of this thing. And also, like you said, they may be a little late, but they're really not that late. I mean, like the Silverado EV is a 24 model year thing. That's probably going to be produced in very low numbers. Mm-hmm. Sierra EV, similar story. The Lightning is the one that really has just taken everything by storm and beaten everybody out there. But theoretically, if Ram delivers what they're saying they're going to deliver here, it will beat the Lightning in a lot of ways. It's not like we prefer the F-150 over the Ram in a lot of other ways to start with. Honestly, we like the Ram 1500 more than any other truck. And here it is, an electric version. So I'm definitely psyched to see it come out.
Same. I think, when we do look at like a few years ago when we were doing our editors picks and our rankings for, the Detroit 3 trucks, and they're the only ones that get editors picks from us. We don't give those out to any of the other competitors because frankly, none of them are nearly as good. The Ram usually is our top rated truck. It's usually at like a 9 or something because of the interior, because of the ride and comfort, because of the wide range of powertrain options you can get from it. And design's subjective, but most of our editors like the design. So, you just transplant some electric gear in there and what's not to like? So I'm very excited to drive it. I think it strikes me as something that, the other thing is you come maybe 6 months, a little bit later, maybe you scoop up a bunch of Car of the Year awards or something because, the Lightning already won, I mean, somebody's got to win in 2024, right? So you can start to stack up some things that way. Not that a company would ever tweak their production cycles that way, but, sometimes being late, and you're talking to somebody who's late for literally everything in his life. So it's not the worst, thing.
No, so long as you come in and beat everybody, which is what Ram is really insisting they are going to do. I think that this thing is going to, sell like hotcakes. Yeah,
I agree. It's all the Ram buyers and all the Ram EV buyers, Stellantis EV buyers are going to look at this. And then you wonder what kind of new customers they can bring in. That'll be interesting to see as well. Because, the Lightning looks like they're bringing in new electric buyers to the truck segment. I would think Chevy will do that. Tesla, of course, is going to do that with the Cybertruck whenever that gets here. So we'll see.
Yes, indeed. Electric trucks, it's getting to be a busy market out there.
I thought, shifting gears, I thought the other like really big headliner, there were a couple, but the EV9, the Kia 3-row SUV, I thought that was just a stunning design display. I walked by it like 4 or 5 times. It was at the back of the hall. I made it like my business to keep going back and looking at it. I tweeted this out, and I think this kind of sums up my thoughts pretty well. I'd like to hear what you think. This could do for Kia like what the Telluride did for Kia. The only difference is this is also electric and it's a 3-row SUV, whereas the Telluride just was like a best-in-class three-row crossover that they had never done before. The company had never done something that ambitious at that size and that nicely equipped. They've had some larger-ish crossovers in the past. But the Telluride really put them in a different segment and perhaps appealed to a different set of consumers. I think the EV9 could do the same thing. And again, it's a crossover and it's electric. So I think they're going to really crush it with this thing.
Yeah, there are like two really big angles from this car where I think Kia is really going to be winning. One is they are pretty much the first like non-luxury three-row electric SUV. Mm-hmm. There's none other out there. I mean, you have the Rivian R1S, and I should actually put an asterisk on that because full size.
Yes. Yes.
Because the EQB and the Model Y both offer three rows, but the third row is essentially useless. In those cars, very, very small people can fit in there, but not much else. But like a full size thing, you can chuck 7 people in and everybody be comfortable. There's the EQS SUV and the Rivian R1S, and those are both so expensive. This thing, on the other hand, it's a Kia. It's going to be priced more like a Kia. We don't know the pricing yet, but reading between the lines, I think the number is probably going to start with 5 somewhere, which puts it, firmly in, the more expensive side of the Telluride category, which is about where it belongs because it's like the same exact size as a Telluride. It's just a couple inches longer, same width, same height. All of the dimensions on the inside are the same as a Telluride. So if you're like, you have a Telluride now and that works super well for your lifestyle and you're like, I might go EV, this seems like the most natural possible fit. Another big thing with the EV9 though is that this is the biggest push into premium, not necessarily luxury, but definitely premium that I've seen Kia take so far. The interior in this thing is really, really something to behold and is a lot nicer than any other Kia product I've ever seen. They make a big deal about all of the vegan materials that they use throughout it, but I really just think that it's the general design, the layout, the level of features and luxury that you get with this thing. I mean, there are just some really, really neat features such as the full layback seats. People in both the front and second row can fully recline and just like sleep while you're charging. The driver assistance stuff, Kia threw LiDAR on this. It should be like one of the best like lane centering adaptive cruise control systems out there when it does come out with all these great new sensors. This thing just has a lot going for it. And like you said off the top, the design is just absolutely killing it. It's a really, really cool looking three-row SUV. It's boxy. It's got sharp angles. It's got interesting creases everywhere. And it looks good. It's not just like confusing and modern and weird looking to be weird. It's actually a cohesive design that really, really appeals to me. And I guarantee it's going to appeal to a lot of people as well that are looking to buy something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's, when you say it's going to be in the 50s, that's really appealing. I think that's an area that a lot of people who are in the market for this type of vehicle, that's going to make them consider this, because why wouldn't you? You can spend, well into the 40s on a Telluride, maybe spend a little bit more and go all electric. DC fast charging is there. The cargo space is comparable to a Telluride. And again, the design is stunning. To me, it looks like something out of like the Volvo Polestar kind of workshop. So I think it's going to be interesting, and Kia has done a good job of I'd say 10 years ago, they did a really good job of scaling up their engine architectures, making better powertrains, V6s, V8s, Turbo 4s. And I'm speaking of Hyundai Motor Group at this point. And now you're seeing them as they move into like electrification. They're really investing heavily in these products. I think are going to be compelling, and it should be interesting. I mean, again, I thought this was definitely a winner as I kept kind of skulking around the Kia stand. And there were a lot of people there too. Like, you probably noticed this at the show. Like, some brands would do their reveals and then that was it. Other brands did their reveals and then there were just people hanging out. the rest of the day. And Kia was one of those stands where it was just doing videos, just people sitting in their like, seats, hanging out, looking at the cars, talking to the executives. Like they really drew a crowd.
Yeah, it's a big deal car. I think that a lot of people realize it is. And one thing that I didn't even mention before is that like all of the electric like platform stuff underneath it, it's all top shelf. It's the eGMP platform with the 800-volt architecture, super fast charging, great range, lots of power. This thing really doesn't have any weak points, I don't think, which is just one of the reasons why, everybody's around. It's like, wow, this thing looks like a winner.
It's interesting too, because I think Kia, they were another brand that wasn't first to like the party in whatever segment, in this case, the electric, but they have a really good naming scheme. EV6, EV9, like electric vehicle and then a number. The bigger it is in ascending order, it makes total sense. Like we have a Mercedes we're going to talk about in a minute, and that's their lineup's already getting confusing to me. So yeah, that's kind of a side note, but it's pretty good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they have unlimited here. They can go EV7, EV5, whatever. Actually, there already is an EV5, but it's for Korea. So yeah, it's smart, and I think the people understand it because they're really getting their cars out there. And I've seen a lot of EV6s just around here in Michigan, anecdotally speaking.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, definitely. It is that long-termer we still have. I enjoyed every minute of having that car here in my driveway. So, all right. Well, let's shift gears over to another Hyundai Motor Co. brand. This is the Genesis GV80. This is a coupe-styled crossover. It was a concept, air quotes, for like a minute, and they've already said they're going to build it. You were actually on the Genesis trip. You were there for a few days. What did you think of it?
So I wasn't actually on that trip. That was Joel that was on that trip for us. I was on the Kia trip, but I went and checked out the Genesis real closely, and it was actually, if I'm going to be honest, it might have been my car of the show.
Okay, got it.
Like when I walked up to it, it was just one of those moments. I was like, wow, this is really, really cool.
Cool.
And I honestly don't normally get excited about something like a crossover coupe or like an SUV coupe. But this to me is like the best looking of all of them right now. And
wow,
it's like this is how I think it should be executed.
Wow.
And I don't know. I don't think I'm that biased from the orange paint, but man, I sure did love the orange too. But just the way that they integrated the coupe roofline and body style to the GV80, which is already a really good looking car. I thought that was great. The few changes that they made to the front to make it sportier, I think that was great. The interior of the concept was just like ridiculous. It has these 4 bucket seats, suede leather, orange accents. The backs of the seats are painted in orange. It is a really, really cool concept car. If you're in New York, like you absolutely have to go see it. Because I can almost guarantee that you're just going to walk up to it and say, wow, this thing looks good. This thing looks really, really good. They're going to build it. They literally confirmed on the on that trip to Joel that they are going to build this thing. We're going to have a GV80 Coupe, which just makes all the sense in the world. We already got a BMW X6 GLE Coupe. All the Germans offer something similar to it. And I think that Genesis can come in there and look better than all of them, frankly. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, this is in some ways like what the X4, the X6, some of the Mercedes and Audis, like this is the design in the silhouette, in the stance that it feels like they never quite got right. And I like the X6 a little bit. Like I like that a little more than some people do. But just this is a very sporty looking crossover. It looks like kind of like a hot hatch that's larger and just slightly elevated a little bit more, which is the whole idea of making these, appealing to consumers who maybe are willing to trade a little bit of space for a little bit more spot, a little bit more style. So Joel kind of posits that he thinks the 3.5 liter V6 might be standard, just to kind of differentiate it from like some of the other, the other Genesis crossovers, which could be cool. We'll see about that. The concept had interesting seats, let's put it that way. Kind of, I think they were Recaros, but they were, I mean, really like race car seats, and they look great. It's, this is the second straight year that Genesis has revealed a really interesting concept at the New York Auto Show. They did the Genesis X last year, I believe. And they're doing a good job, I think. They've sort of, I think, in a way, taking up the mantle from Infiniti as far as being like the import brand that just hangs its hat on design. And I think that's good. I think that's frankly a missed opportunity that Infiniti has started to fade a little bit. And then Genesis is right there, and they're always going to win on value too, unless they decide to really like rearrange their price structure. So they're compelling products. If you could get people to get into them and give them a shot, they look great. They drive great. They're racking up all kinds of awards. Yeah.
Genesis has really been killing it with their concepts as of late. Like the last 3 or 4 auto shows now, they've released a new one. They've had all their Genesis X concepts, their coupe, their shooting brake, their convertible, and now this. Mm-hmm. They're definitely on a roll as far as concepts go. This one's going to be built. We're still TBD on those Genesis X concepts, which are probably the most stunning that they've made. But it's obvious that their designers are on a roll, and they know what they're doing. Just got to see these things come to production now.
All right. So I would say those are like the big 3, if you will. And then the Kona was significant. It was more like, I would say, tweaks and refreshes. It's not like a full-on new generation, but, they did some different, to me, the way I would sum it up is it's all grown up now. It's a little more refined as far as like the appearance. It looks a little Tesla-esque, if you will. I don't know if I want to go there, but it looks different than the outgoing Kona, which is a little more, it looks like a small crossover with some attitude. This looks a little more futuristic. It almost looks like it's electric, even though like one version of the Kona is electric, and then there's like hybrid gas. It's sort of like the transitional car, to be honest. Like wherever you're at in the electric revolution, including not being part of it, Hyundai can help you with the Kona. So it's interesting. And then there was an Ioniq 6, Ioniq 5 that was Disney themed. So Hyundai had a pretty good press conference too, I thought.
They did. Yeah, no, the Kona was an interesting one. It wasn't like the full global reveal. We've already seen this thing before. This was the North American reveal of it here in New York. And it's not a new platform, sort of like you were getting at there. It's the same platform, but Hyundai stretched it a good bit, which is probably the biggest news about this thing. Sure, there's the new design, the new interior, but the powertrain specs are almost completely carryover. There's almost no change there at all. The big thing is that it's just so much bigger than before. Mm-hmm. The Kona was definitely like on the smaller side of subcompact crossovers previously. Backseat was cramped. The trunk was a little tiny. Hyundai expanded it a good bit now. I hopped into the back seat of an N-line model and was just blown away by how much space there was back there now. I had set the front seat where it was comfortable for me, and I was nowhere close to even touching the back of that front seat, whereas in the previous Kona, I was like knees brushed against, head cramped, just all around, felt like a very small vehicle. Now this thing honestly feels more like a previous generation, like Tucson, or just something an entire class above what it was before. So if you're thinking like, Kona's too small of a car for me, maybe this next generation might not be that too small of a car for you, just because it's so much bigger now. And Hyundai can sort of do that because they still have the Venue. Like there's the really, really small crossover that they offer if that's what you want. But the Kona is definitely not the little mini me that it was before.
This reminds me a little bit of like what Honda did with the HR-V. They took what was kind of a, compact crossover, the bottom of the line, and then stretched it out a little bit, sleekened up the style, you get something a bit different. So yeah, no, that's the Kona, and there's still 2 gas-powered engines too. I think it's interesting when you look at all the different ways automakers are approaching segments with, how they're trying to fine-tune their powertrain lineups. You almost might think in this segment it'd be easier just to go with one, but you got 2 choices here. If you only want to use gas, you can do that. So it's almost interesting to say that, because you're so used to like, well, it's hybrid only, or they're gonna, this is it, then they're gonna go all electric. So
I was actually asking their product planner about that. Like, all right, you're Hyundai, you guys have like a hybrid of every model.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many hybrids. Why is there no hybrid Kona? They're like, well, we just really want to push people into the electric if they want something green, and then the gasoline ones are more like a budget conscious choice.
That makes perfect sense too.
So, is there an argument for a hybrid? I think there is. Literally, they have the Niro with that hybrid powertrain. Like, they could probably be like, hey, Kia, can we use this in our Kona? Very similar sized car and all. But no, that's not the direction that they wanted to go with for the Kona. It's electric or gas. And the one gas engine I think is like slightly entertaining too. It's you get the 1.6 turbo with the 8-speed automatic. It's not entirely boring. There's a little something there for you.
All right, so let's move over to something that I think is just kind of a lot of fun. This is another thing another press conference that felt like a real auto show. Subaru with the Wilderness variant of the Crosstrek. They had a legitimate press conference, if you will. They had the puppies Subaru is always a big supporter of pet adoptions. So they had the puppies that you could go and pet and adopt, I guess, if you wanted. They were very cute. They also had like their sort of national parks themed stand. It was, again, talk about the car, but again, Subaru showed up. I was looking at the Audi display, which, Audi is based out of, I believe, Virginia. It's not that far from New York. It looked like a dealer display with the house lights. It looked kind of sad. And then
it absolutely was a dealer display.
Yeah. So, but then you get Volkswagen that showed up like this could have been Detroit 2010. It was a legit display. And again, Wilderness Crosstrek, no surprise there, but kind of fun off-roader, because the Crosstrek, I think, it's the right-sized vehicle to go through trails and stuff, because it's not particularly big. And they gave it the Wilderness treatment, which a little bit more capable. And Subaru says that apparently plastic cladding is coming back. They're making it so. I saw a tweet where somebody said, remember when General Motors and Honda used to get like ruthlessly made fun of for doing this to their vehicles? But I don't know. Times change. Tastes change. I think the Crosstrek looks pretty good. And those tires look like they could just claw through like a bog. So, yeah, I think it's what we expected. There's nothing really groundbreaking here.
Yeah, I think, the Wilderness package being applied to the Crosstrek is honestly one of the most natural fits for that package. I think that a lot of enthusiasts have really taken to the Crosstrek as this little adventure vehicle. I see a lot of them modified online, honestly, with bigger tires, small lift, something like that. So Subaru doing that from the factory makes a whole lot of sense to me. And the package is a good one. I think that, they paired it with the 2.5, the bigger engine, which is definitely what it should be paired with. The look is a little plasticky for me. There's almost, just as much plastic as there is paint on the car. To each their own. But it certainly stands out in whatever parking lot or driveway you want to park it in. There's so many gold and yellow accents everywhere. Yeah. The blue paint really, really pops. Subaru did not phone it in on the exterior look or the capability of this Wilderness car at all. It's a legit, little mini off-roader, and it's pretty cool. And one little tidbit that I thought was really interesting is that this thing has better towing than the other Crosstreks, and it's got a 3,500 pound towing capacity, which to me is just like Wow, for that small
Yeah.
of a crossover, like I expect something more like 1,000, 2,000 pounds. Um, but no, 3,500, and you can tow a tiny little camper maybe on your way up and unhitch and go off roading. So sweet little package.
All right. Now moving over to the Jeep Wrangler, which I know people are going to get excited about. Um, Subtle changes, but significant. I would almost put this in the same kind of boat as like the Hyundai Kona, where it's like it's not mind-blowing changes, but they're important. To me, they're in direct response to the Bronco. Competition is good, and Jeep is responding to Ford by making the Wrangler better. I mean, for years when Wrangler had the segment to itself, they could just be like, here's the new generation. We'll see you in 8 or 9 years for the next one. Now it's like, okay, you got to do a legit mid-cycle refresh here if you want to stay competitive. And they did that. It was another legitimate press conference. They showed up. And again, it felt like a real reveal, even though, again, it's a mid-cycle refresh. So that's good. Couple of the headliner things, like literally from the headline, is the 4xe. There is a cheaper version of it, which I think is good. The 4xe is not inexpensive. Let's put it that way. And the EcoDiesel, that's the 6-cylinder, is gone, which I don't really know what the take rate was on that. I personally liked it. I remember I had a very memorable Thanksgiving in it in 2019 driving all around, but maybe that's not where people are going right now. So some slight design changes, interior stuff, but if you're looking to get into a Jeep in 2024, it's a little bit better for you.
Yeah, no, there were some small things. Like you said, I think it's all because of the Bronco. Jeep is over here improving, trying to outmatch them. The one highlight for me in this thing is the new Uconnect infotainment system.
Mm-hmm.
It's got this really nice big widescreen display now, which is a huge upgrade over the previous Uconnect system. It looks really classy on the dash. I think they integrated it nicely. So huge tech upgrade. And then one other small thing, they added power seats. The Wrangler didn't have power seats before.
I don't think I knew that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like just this weird little thing that, all right, the Jeep Wrangler, you could go buy like a $75,000 Wrangler and it still had manual seats. But now you can option these 12-way power seats in a Wrangler. Bronco offered it. Now the Wrangler does too.
That's interesting. I did not realize that you couldn't get that. That's really interesting. Okay. Yeah, I like that because, when you drive a Bronco, depending on drive a Wrangler, depending on the circumstances, sometimes you got to move around, adjust, and it can be a bit old school, I guess is one way to put it, to move the seats around. So yeah, I think that's a good move because one of the Jeep executives said something that surprised me. They said New York was one of their top markets for the Wrangler, I was surprised. I kind of wanted to follow up on that. I was like, you mean New York State, like New York City? Is it just because there's so many people? And it's certainly probably around here where people buy a Wrangler Rubicon to go off road once a year when they maybe go to the cottage or something. You just want the look and the Wrangler, and it's like the best, if you will, so you pay more for it. Maybe it's that kind of a situation, but if that's true, I think that was a very strategic reveal. Reveal the Wrangler, the new version of the Wrangler in New York. Get a lot of eyeballs for it.
Based on the drive to LaGuardia and back, having a Jeep Wrangler might not have actually been a bad idea. There were that was brutal, honestly, in some cases.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
So maybe that's why it's so big. Everybody's like, I need a Jeep. I need to traverse these terrible roads.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I had an hour and a half commute getting back to the airport. I was pretty nervous. I had to cancel my Uber driver because he was late. And then, so I went with Lyft and he was like, yeah, I'll be there in 2 minutes. I'm like, great, this is awesome. And he was really psyched about the EV9. His neighbor had an EV6. So we had a really cool conversation. It's always fun when you get in a ride share and, they're car people. So that was cool. But yeah, man, the ride to LaGuardia was insane. like getting back. I would have liked a Bronco or a Raptor or a Wrangler. And speaking of the commute to LaGuardia, I think I told you this on Tuesday. I landed exactly as the Trump motorcade rolled into LaGuardia. And I was a little nervous because I'm like, well, how's this going to work out? Is there going to be security? Is there going to be traffic, protests? What's going to happen here? I was literally watching it on the plane, flipping between like CNN, CBS, and it kind of dawned on me. I think it was all in the back of our minds, like, hey, that hearing was happening when we're all going to be in New York. How will that impact the show? And it didn't at all. So that was good. But I couldn't help but wonder. I'm like, whoa, he's going to the same place I am. How am I going to get to my hotel? Are they going to like lock down things? But no troubles whatsoever. So that worked out pretty good. I wrote a little piece in our live blog. You should check out the live blog, by the way, if you're listening. You could kind of do a replay, just kind of like, minute by minute of what we were doing. It was like my almost brush with, sort of the news of the day. So, but yeah, traffic was terrible in New York this week. I'll put it that way.
I have to concur.
All right. So let's talk about the new GLS. That was revealed. This should have been revealed at New York. Let me put it that way.
No kidding.
Mercedes used to do big pressers. They don't. I remember one year they did one with John Hamm, Don Draper, who is their spokesman. And he was like in character for it. It was pretty cool. But yeah, not this year. But they just kicked out the press release. And it's a fairly significant upgrade. It's sort of along the Kona and Wrangler upgrades for the new model year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, just like he said, this should have been in New York. I can't think of a better place to reveal like a flashy new full-size Mercedes that's like crazy expensive. They even revealed the Maybach and the AMG versions at the same time, which definitely seems right up New York's alley. But slight little appearance changes, both outside and inside. They gave it the latest MBUX stuff. The new Maybach gets these really cool side intakes in the front. I guess cool and or tacky depending on your style preferences. But the little side air intakes have the Maybach logo like repeated over and over and over on them, like really small. It's like, oh, okay, yes, it's a Maybach. It's definitely a Maybach. So I just thought that was a funny little new touch on it. But no, it's good that they're doing this. I know I recently drove the refreshed X7. That thing was really, really good. Mm-hmm. So Mercedes has got to keep it current. The one thing that I don't know, I guess I shouldn't have expected it with a mid-cycle refresh, but it's still the old screen setup, still their horizontal stuff that they've been rocking for a long time. It's not like the new S-Class or C-Class or frankly any other new stuff that has like the giant portrait tablet on the front. This is still old school Mercedes. It still has a little touchpad down there and everything to control it by. So maybe if you like that stuff, if you like the older school Mercedes setup, this could appeal to you. If you don't like that giant whole tablet as center console look, and it'll be like this for a little while yet. Since this is just refreshed, it'll stay the same. So yeah, new GLS. Definitely should have been in New York. Still looks like a promising refresh, though.
Yeah, that would have, that's in some ways, I think that's where like auto shows from a press perspective, they need to maybe almost, and New York's pretty aggressive about kicking out press releases about every car revealed anywhere near the auto show and almost like claiming credit, which I think as journalists, sometimes that feels obnoxious, but I think it's also probably a good move, in some ways, I saw this with Detroit too, where it seemed like there were vehicles around the show that they could have been a little more aggressive about trying to get that automaker in to make it part of the show. Maybe that's not a priority. I don't know, but you saw that a lot with Chevy. There was a bunch of stuff that was dumped out in August. We're like, what? Why was this not at Detroit 3 weeks later? In Mercedes is, that's New Jersey. Their corporate headquarters would have made a lot of sense for like really the only major car show in the Northeast. But, I don't know. I agree with you though. Vehicle looks good. I think the infotainment touchscreen, like the setup, that could be strategic. It's, we'll see how consumers like that. Mercedes buyers, some of them are a little bit older, so I don't think everybody loves screens for all forever. I mean, they're so overwhelming. And I think it looks good too. They kind of gave the grille a little bit of a kind of like a nip and tuck, and it's, that almost seems to be the theme with design in the last couple years, is like taper the nose, tone down the grille, and like you just across segments you're seeing that, whether it's like the Ioniq, the Kona, for example, Mercedes now. I mean, unless you're BMW, it seems like grills are maybe becoming less of your design identity. So, all right, so let's stay with Mercedes and do a couple of quick reviews here. You drove the EQE, sedan or crossover. I guess I should clarify that. Which one did you drive?
Yeah, this was the sedan, and specifically it was the AMG version.
Copy that. EQE. Okay.
So yeah, a lot of power. You get in the so long as you put it in the Sport Plus mode, you get 677 horsepower and 738 pound-feet of torque.
Sounds good.
So that is more than like the E63, E63S. Pretty much more power than all of those gasoline-powered AMG vehicles. But it's in, that EQE sort of like bubble cloud car shape form. So it doesn't really look like it's a really hot performance car from the outside. Like there are a few performance touches here and there. It's got like a AMG-ish grille, tiny little spoiler, AMG wheels. But if you want to like run under the radar and still go 0 to 60 in 3.2 seconds, like this is a really good vehicle to do so with. As for how it drives, I don't think that it's, it's a great car. I don't know that it's a great AMG. Like what?
Okay.
What we're used to in like AMGs are these like really rowdy, very traditional gasoline powered V8s, great inline sixes, and I just feel like that's so instrumental to like what makes an AMG an AMG. This thing, it tries to, sort of warp and change that by saying, okay, we're going to design this crazy soundtrack for the interior. The regular EQE, EQS, and those models, they also have like an interesting, like spacey sort of soundtracks that play over. But this one is like legitimately loud to the point where like you're sitting in there and your passengers are like, whoa, like what's going on? The interior is so loud now that you have it in Sport Plus. And so there's like a serious effort there made by AMG to like bring some amount of character and some difference between like the non-AMG EQEs and whatnot. I just don't really think that it works that well. Like as an enthusiast, I would almost just prefer a more natural sound. The strange like spaceship noises are just a little too weird for me. Maybe they'll appeal to other people, but it wasn't really doing it for me in that way. That said, handling, acceleration, all of that, like really, really good. This thing rides on an air suspension. It's like super comfortable, way more comfortable than any AMG I've driven in recent memory. And you throw it in the Sport Plus mode and everything stiffens up. It's got rear wheel steering, super fast change of direction, a lot of grip. It's heavy, you feel the weight, but it handles quite well. And the acceleration, it really, there are some EVs where like you get on it for like a longer session when you're on like a great group of roads and whatnot, you start to feel that power fade. No such thing in this car. It kept delivering the full horsepower that it felt like it was rated for. It's pretty relentless, honestly. It is fast and some more. My only real big complaint with like the actual driving dynamics, as far as like the AMG-ness of it, or the brakes, and this sort of applies to like all of the EQ stuff, the transition between regen and the actual mechanical brakes is not good. Like when you're just daily driving, when you're driving it hard and like getting on the brakes, it is just sort of disconcerting, honestly, because Mercedes does the thing where it kind of like brings the pedal down halfway with you as like you're actually pressing the brake, and then you need to find it. And then there's a strange friction point where it's like, oh man, I didn't want that much brake. Oh, now I want more brake. And it's not a natural progression at all. There needs to be some fine tuning in there, because it's a little jarring. And even after driving it like for a whole week and trying to get accustomed to it, like I could not get used to it. It was not natural in any which way. But yeah, that's sort of the AMG EQE in a nutshell. I think it's definitely a great car. It'd be like a fantastic daily driver. I'm just not sure that it's like you want to go out and sell that E63S sedan that you have right now and go and buy this, because I think performance-wise, you're going to be deeply disappointed by the sound, and there's also the looks factor. If you like that look, sure, but it has not grown on me. The EQ sort of streamliner shape just doesn't really look like an AMG. One thing that I actually tweeted was like it needs to have some beefier fenders. I think some nice AMG beefy fenders with some good wheels and tires to fill it out. That might bring it and give it the character that I'm really looking for. But as it stands now, it's just missing a few things to me to be that standout AMG car.
You know, it's interesting. You know, you have me thinking here, like as, you know, electrification becomes, you know, dominant in many parts of the car business, you know, what does that mean for a brand like AMG, which is like rip snorting V8s, you know, or larger V12s, you know? So it's interesting. Like you look at, say, like Dodge has been almost belligerent about maintaining like their muscle thing with electric, whereas Mercedes and AMG have like voluntarily kind of, oh geez, I don't know if I should say this, sanitized their cars. Like the AMG is just another version of the EQE, if you will, which is how it always has been with the E-Class. But I mean, like I agree with you. When you look at the design, I'm like, man, and I haven't driven this, but it doesn't look like an AMG. It doesn't look and feel the part, despite the fact the numbers are there in evidence. I mean, it's faster, you know, I mean, it's electric, you get all that torque naturally. So it's obviously quick as hell, but it definitely changes one of the things that for me is the very essence of AMG. I mean, our old road test editor, Reese Counts, he used to own, I think he still does own, like what, a C43?
I chatted with him an auto show or two ago. He's still got it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's an AMG, you know, and I don't know, man. This AMG, because there's all that history, you know, it's kind of like, and the cars have such a visceral feel. Like, to me, they're like German muscle cars, which is awesome, you know. So then you kind of do this, and it's like, you know, I don't know. I think the road to electrification can be different for everybody, and maybe for AMG, it kind of needs to be.
Honestly, I think that this is, I mean, so that they've had the EQS AMG, and now they've had this. I think that they're honestly trying to find their way. They're doing some experimentation. The sounds thing, you'll really have to experience it to like form a full opinion on that, because it is really something. It's a bigger effort than I've seen anybody try to take. Like i4 M50, the Model S Plaid, the Hummer, whatever. Like this is a very dramatic entrance into like, hey, AMG electric. It's going to be like really weird in here.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I honestly think that the strategy will evolve and change as they get more feedback from people. And, you know, I don't know what is AMG electric in the future. I hope that it evolves to some form that is definitely slightly different from this. So
yeah, I agree with you. Could be a good column. It's a good podcast.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about my time in the Toyota Sienna minivan. I think it's fully broken in now. I took it from Metro Detroit to Gulf Shores. That's like a region right on the border between Alabama and Florida, right off the Gulf of Mexico. It was a lovely spring break vacation with the family. Spent most of my time at the beach bars, things like that. It was great. You know, kids had fun. It was just great vacation. And the Sienna got me there. You know, first of all, just from like a cargo capacity perspective, we filled up maybe a third of it. I mean, you can take so much stuff in a minivan, and this is 3 people, you know, including one 5-year-old. and all the stuff that, you need to bring with, a kid like that. And it was great. You can put everything in there. Maybe this summer it'll loop back, and like if we go camping or something, that's when you have even more gear to bring. Like you don't have that much stuff to bring to like a Vrbo Airbnb type situation besides yourself and your beach gear, but more than up for the task there. I think the story is, I guess, kind of the fuel efficiency. I logged almost exactly 2,000 miles on this thing. Always was getting in the low-ish 30s. My best stint was 33 flat. I had a 32.7 miles per gallon, another 32. The only one that was actually kind of a bit of an outlier is right when I filled it up before I left. I notched 27.1 miles per gallon, which is a little on the low side. But that was like a lot of errands and around town driving and sitting in parking lots in Michigan. So I think that's kind of explains that. But great highway vehicle, comfortable, again, very fuel efficient. I hardly had to fill up. It ended up being, let's see how many fill ups. It ended up being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And I'm going to fill it up again before it goes to wherever it's going to next, I think, in short order. So that'll be like sort of nominally 7th, but I done a lot of local driving too. The drive to Gulf Shores is like almost little over 1,000. Just door to door, I could fill it up, drive it, fill it up at like 500, then almost quite get there. So, I mean, to me, that's remarkable for like just fuel economy. In practice, you don't want to drive it to zero and be in the middle of nowhere. And like, Ohio and Alabama are the two states, or Georgia, depending on which way you go, where like once you hit the middle of nowhere, you're in the middle of nowhere, and you don't want to like not know where your next gas station is, although the infotainment was very good at telling me. So in practice, you can't just fill up once, but at least by the numbers, you could get there. And that to me is really, really an impressive feat for this vehicle.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I can't think of a better road trip vehicle than something like a Toyota Sienna. The fuel economy that you got, good luck getting that in any 3-row SUV.
Yeah.
It's just straight up not going to happen. And that's even better fuel economy than we got in our Pacifica hybrid once the battery ran out.
Yep.
You could drive that thing around under gasoline power and you'd get in like the high 20s. But nothing close to what you were like. It looked like you were in the low 30s for the most part.
Very consistent. Just kept knocking them down.
Yeah, which is remarkable for the amount of utility that you get with that. So yeah, it sounds like the road trip went off without a hitch, honestly. So let's just keep racking them up because this seems like an elite road trip vehicle.
Yeah. It's a hybrid, obviously, but it's a traditional hybrid. Anecdotally, 2 people in the last couple of weeks have asked me well, how do you plug it in? I think the idea of electrification has become so just in the forefront of so many people's minds that they've forgotten how hybrids work. And it was interesting for me because I struggled to explain it. I was like, this is how it works. And I was giving this almost academic overview, of trying to explain it. And then finally I was just it's like a Prius. And then people are like, oh, okay. But to me, it's just interesting how the conversation for electrics have people forgotten about hybrids in some ways. And this is a perfect application for just this huge transport ship where, you don't want to mess around plugging it in. I think the hybrid for the Pacifica, the plug-in, it's, again, I kind of like how Pacifica looks a little better. If you're going to do a lot of around town driving and you have a charger, that's probably the way to go, especially if you like the Pacifica, which a lot of people do. It has a lot of strong points. But if you're looking more for just straight fuel economy and you're going to put a lot of miles on it, I mean, it's tough to beat this thing.
I completely agree. It's a road trip killer. The Pacifica, definitely the around town guy, just because 30 miles of electric range. But for your use case here, the Sienna was definitely the way to go.
Only downsides, and Joel Stockdale noted this too a little bit when he was driving it. It gets a little loud on the highway. It's it's, the drone of the engine, that like it, I don't know if it's not particularly well insulated. It gets a little loud, like not bad, but not great. It's not, obviously it's a Toyota. It's not a Lexus.
Yeah.
But so there was a little bit of a drone and I got stuck. It was like literally the whole world apparently decided to drive to Florida or, go south this week. So traffic was brutal. So, it was comfortable, but it was also like, this is kind of loud. But
it's kind of loud. Doesn't necessarily feel like it's like a $50,000 plus minivan,
Yep.
which is not cheap at all. So maybe it doesn't necessarily feel like $50,000 after 1,000 miles, and it's little too loud for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Then again, I heard the average price point might be 50, if it's not already. It was like 48. I think I read somewhere even 60 might be common. And a lot of that's driven by trucks and SUVs, but still.
Maybe got to reset expectations.
On multiple levels, yeah. All right, breaking news. You want to hear who the winners are for the editor's picks?
Ooh, let's hear it.
Just came in. All right. All right, so we'll wrap up the show with this. Let's see. Let me just double check that everything adds up right here. The winner is, do you want to take a guess what the winner is?
I'm going to go ahead and guess it's the Ram REV. If it's not the Ram REV, it's got to be the EV9.
First and second, you got it. Ram number 1, EV9 number 2. It was very close, but those were far and away the top two. And the Ram, they both got very healthy point totals. Let's put it that way. The Ram, almost everybody gave it like a very hefty figure. The EV9 actually was a little more consistent, if you will. People gave it a lot of, was also very heavily weighted. Let's put it that way. There were a couple of, there was like one outlier that I think who this voter is, didn't give the Ram REV a lot of points, which made it a little more closer. So there was one voter there. And then just looking at some of the trends here, it looks like, randomly somebody gave the Ioniq 5 Disney a lot of points, which is great.
What?
Hey, that's fine. 100th anniversary of Disney. Why not? So some of those things sort of maybe skewed things a little bit. And so those were 1 and 2. And then 3, we have a tie for third between the Kona and the Genesis GV80, which I'm a little surprised on that, to be honest. I would have kind of thought and I think you would probably agree looking at your vote totals. Mm-hmm. But that also probably skewed things. That's usually how our voting works for everybody listening at home, is like certain people really dial in or vote strategically, because you can give up to 10 points in any one segment. And usually that's what I do. I pick a winner and give it 10 points, then work my votes from there. And, the GV80 had obviously a strong following, tied it with the Kona. I think just kind of extrapolating there, you've kind of got the sizzle and the steak. The Kona this is going to happen. This is all very realistic. The GV80 is also going to happen. But it was technically a concept. So maybe people kind of like split their votes there. Like some people went with like the refresh that's going to happen right away versus the splashy crossover coupe concept that, has more limited, applications as far as the consumer segment. And then 5th place was the Wrangler, which no surprise there. I kind of thought the Crosstrek Wilderness might get a few more votes, but it was kind of right in there with the Ioniq 5 Disney.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah,
I definitely think that the Wilderness deserves a few more attaboys than the Ioniq 5 Disney.
Well, the Crosstrek consistently got votes, whereas the Disney had one really big supporter. Let's put it that way. Supporter. That's fine. So, any thoughts on this?
Oh man, it feels about right. I know that I didn't vote for the Rev as my winner of show, but it definitely deserves the votes that it got, and so does the EV9.
Yeah,
those we're far and away the two most important cars at the show. Yeah, and it sounds like we've reflected that.
Yeah, definitely. So now, hey, if you're listening at home, now you know. We'll have that full rundown. It will be up probably by the time you're downloading this on your iPhones, Pixels, whatever you listen to, and you can kind of chew on that over the weekend. So good to see you this morning, Zach. Good to see you in New York. I think we can leave it there. If you enjoy the Autoblog podcast, that's 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the show. Please send us your Spend My Monies. That's podcast@autoblog.com. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next week.